Okay.
I have something to present. Oh, I'm glad, Councilman Alarcon, that the freeway traffic from the valley didn't slow you down today. You're really very prompt. I have a group of petitions that we started last year after the city council item we are considering today was passed, hoping it could be accelerated. It's been about a year's time. We have collected 995 petitions that are represented here. May I give it to you, sir? It's heavy. I also have what I wish the council members of this committee to consider. This is an article that was in Native Peoples magazine in October of 2003. It applauded the merger of Southwest Museum and Autry National Center. It articulated the hopes all of us had that the deficiencies of the previous Southwest Museum management would be remediated by Autry National Center, particularly in the area of deferred maintenance and publicity. As you know, that really did not happen. As a matter of fact, it seemed that almost immediately upon acquisition, there was less of all of those things at Southwest Museum. I want this committee to go forward positively with what is on your agenda. I thank you.
Now we have Heinrich Kiefer.
Good morning. My name is Heinrich Kiefer. I'm a member of the Friends of the Southwest Museum Coalition, the Kiwanis organization with a focus on youth in the community. I've been participating with the Friends group for about the last 6 years, and I've seen some of the things that have occurred under the partnership, if we will. So I would hope that I would encourage the committee to strongly put this working group together, keep it open, keep it available, because clearly the last 6 years have not proven to be very successful. So with that, I'm anxious to see the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Hossert?
Good morning, Chairperson. It's Nicole Possert, and I'm representing the Friends of the Southwest Museum. I'll be very brief. We were here before, and we are in support of motion items 1, 2, and opposed to item 3. And thank you very much for bringing this back to your committee and considering it. Thank you.
Sure. Daniel Wright?
Good morning, Councilmember Daniel Wright of Mount Washington. I'm also with the Friends of the Southwest Museum and have spent 8 years on this project, half a lifetime it seems sometimes. We want to thank you for your leadership in moving the Autry Museum stewardship problems forward in working hard on these motions. I know, unfortunately, the public has not seen a preview of how the motions might have been reworked and what the specific proposal is. So it's a little hard in this public comment period to respond to what the shape of the proposed task force might be. But nonetheless, based upon the way the motions are currently written, we would support items 1 and 2, but remain opposed to proposal number 3 to the extent that it purports to restrict the study of the Southwest Museum only to a new use. That's been the problem all along, that the Autry promised in the merger that it would be a capable steward of the assets of the Southwest Museum. While they are a private nonprofit, as a charitable organization, their possession of these incredibly valuable cultural assets carry with them a very solemn public duty that is found in California law with regard to fiduciary duties. those fiduciary duties have been appallingly broken over the last number of years, and that is why some type of positive action from the city is needed to help move these issues off of where they've been dead for a number of years. So we appreciate the city's willingness and interest in taking more leadership to bring about positive changes in the stewardship of the Southwest Museum assets, because they are part of our cultural heritage in the city and something that is deserving of saving and can be saved. Thank you.
Luke Swetland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Reyes. My name is Luke Swetland, Vice President at the Autry. As we've stated before, we believe a working group comprised of the Autry and the city, with active involvement from experts who know this complex field, along with input from various community stakeholders from across Los Angeles, is the best way for us to collectively find and support an honorable future for the Mount Washington facility and the Casa de Adobe. The Autry is committed to this partnership and to ensuring a viable future for these important facilities. We've been working hard to find partners, and it's not been easy. We believe the time has come to take the next step and to have the city and a broader working group come together to help pursue a new direction. Over the past year, in various meetings, in discussions involving the Autry, with City Council, with individual council members, including some of you here today, there have been numerous comments about the importance of joint efforts, about the value of the facilities to the city and to the community, and the importance of pursuing a different and a collaborative approach. There have been comments about the need to focus on a positive discussion about the future, not the past, and a need for us all to honor our collective obligation. The Autry has heard you and is committed to such a revised course. And we are here today to urge that we can join together with you, the city, to pursue a positive and productive future for the Mount Washington facilities, the historic Southwest Museum building, and the Casa de Adobe. Thank you.
Okay, David Burton.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Reyes. David Burton with the Autry National Center. I just wanted to add that my concurrence with the comments of my colleague. I think we at the Autry are very much in favor of a workforce that can provide some positive solutions to the situation at the Mount Washington campus. I want to just reiterate some comments I made the last time the committee met in respect to motion number 2. For much of my tenure at the Autry, I've been there 14 years. I was responsible for foundation and government grants. And I just think that the restrictions placed on number 2 are in many ways a bit naive about how fundraising works. I think we're seeing more and more as we try to raise funds for operations at the Autry and the conservation of the Southwest Collection that funders largely drive, their interests largely drive what you can apply for and what you can get. And what I'm afraid with the restriction that all applications for renovations at the Autry include funding for another location, I'm just terribly afraid that it might result in not getting money for anything, that funders are going to have their specific priorities. They're either going to want to see exhibitions at a certain location or renovations here or there. I'm just afraid that when you split it between the two, or you force funding to go to both places, nothing will happen. No funding will be forthcoming. I think you really have to be thinking about funding for specific projects, and if there's a good project that we can come up with for the future of the Southwest Museum, I think we go whole hog after funding for that, but leave it separate from funding requests that might touch the Griffith Park facility.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I understand that concern, and I think there's a lot of practicality to what you're saying, but there's also a notion of how we create environments. And people who are in a position and discretion are decision makers when they offer grants, when they offer competitive environments and RFPs. Those environments can be created by, I think, both the Southwest and Gene Autry. And this is a 2, 3, 4-year process. So I understand the concern for the naiveness of what is being said in black and white. But the spirit here is to try to create a common goal where the Southwest Museum, in as much as Gene Autry, are viewed in the same plane, and that value is given to both. And that people who are out there, who are heads of different types of funding resources, understand that environment and hopefully will have the will and a desire to fund both. And that's the environment we're looking for. So you're right. Every individual has their own set of priorities. Every funder has their own sense of purpose. We can't twist anyone's arms. But the point here is to try to get both to understand the significance of looking at that environment in a way where they both benefit. And that's really the intent there. I've done a lot of fundraising in my other life before I became councilman in another part of the state, in the northern part of the state. Different culture, granted, but I think we're at a point now where we're mature enough to try to figure out how to stimulate environments for both. And I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert Brody.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of guaranteeing the survival and the name of the Southwest Museum.
Wait, I'm sorry, what item is that?
This is,
Guaranteeing what?
well, the survival.
Okay.
Well, what did, I don't even want to ask.
Oh, that was a comment, not a
Yes,
an
I'm
actual
in favor
fact.
of
Okay.
this 11-1060 CD4 motion. And going back and reading the original letter of intent with the Autry, there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm a layman, that the intent of the Autry taking over the Southwest Museum and its collection was to guarantee that the museum would operate as an independent museum and its collection would be renovated. And up till now, that has not happened, and in my opinion, this motion is needed to force, and now they agree to, the Autry to uphold its end of the agreement, of its intent, which it has completely done a 180 and backed away from. And I would like to make this comment that the city's gone through a horrendous PR problem with Mr. McCourt, who bought the Dodgers, who was completely insensitive to the community's involvement in their team. And I'm just saying to the Autry that the community that the Southwest Museum is in is a very proactive community within the city, and it would behoove everybody to work it out. The money's there. They've been able to raise an untold amount of money to finance a 100,000 square foot research and renovation building in Burbank, which also bothers me because the city gets nothing for that. So I think they're insensitive and they need to have, they need to be awakened. Thank you.
Dr. Stan Moore.
My name is Dr. Stan Moore. I represent the Historic Highland Park Neighborhood Council, among many other groups in our area. One of the things that the Autry has said is that the opposition to what they're doing is just a small group of little crybabies and troublemakers. We have over 70 local and regional organizations that have supported the Friends of the Southwest Museum Coalition as we've tried to get the oldest museum reopened. 4 times in the 11 years that I've been on the Highland Park Neighborhood Council, we have voted unanimously to support the Friends of the Southwest Museums Coalition trying to get the museum reopened. So it's not a small little group. The Levin report said that it could be done back in 2005. for about $16 million. We need to check and see what those figures would be today. But frankly, many of us are really tired of the games that the Autry plays. A researcher recently was at the Braun Library, and he overheard some young staffers of the Autry talking about the fact that they were going to reopen the Autry on this Saturday, the 19th, for 6 hours, 10 to 4, because the state had warned them that if they didn't reopen the museum, that they were in danger of losing their $6+ million grant that they had received. So they're going to open it for 6 hours. If you don't ask the right question of how long and how much is open, you won't know that it was one room and a hallway. And so we really would like to see it, the game stop, and that we do our best to try and save this precious resource of the state of California and the city of Los Angeles.
Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, and board member for that, and member of the Coalition for Southwest Museum. Why? Because 20 years ago, I went to the museum. It was a good museum. Small, hey, but it was in our community. Lincoln Heights also considers Southwest Museum as a valuable resource for our Northeast LA. Most of the neighborhood councils, which represent maybe 1 million people or 500,000 people, want this museum in Northeast LA for our people. Oh, by the way, I've spent about 15 years of nights in museums. At the University of Kansas, the Peabody Museum at Harvard University, the Anthropological Museum in Nairobi, Kenya, and I was an associate of LA County Museum, worked actively on archaeological materials. This is one of the finest collections, and there's more than enough. We have experts, we have community members, we have people that are interested and knowledgeable to help work this out and get it open. What we need is the cooperation of the city as an independent arbiter, and to help us get back with the Autry to do one thing, get this museum open and an active and vital part of our Northeast LA. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. S. Diana Roth.
I'd like to thank the committee for holding this hearing today and for preparing these proposals that are quite excellent. I have somewhat background in fundraising. I was a fundraiser for a Skid Row project, fundraising for the homeless for 8 years. There's nothing more difficult in terms of fundraising than raising money for homeless projects, because nobody wants to give to the homeless, and that's a fact. I take issue with the gentleman's statement about the difficulties of fundraising. In fact, the Autry Museum, while a private institution and while controlling and managing a collection that has been private since it was originally assembled, is asking for money and relies on money and subsidies in the form of low rent from the City of Los Angeles and other government agencies. All of that money gives the public, in my opinion, a right to a say in what the Autry Museum does. And the idea that they can't fundraise for such an attractive project as the Southwest Museum really seems absurd to me. I think that perhaps the city should make its funding and its subsidy of the park facilities conditioned on the Autry's performance with regard to fundraising and the maintenance of the Southwest Museum. When we had grants, they were often conditioned on all kinds of things, making all kinds of things. So I would like to request that. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Roth?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Reyes. I am a resident of Highland Park, and we've lived there for 24 years. But prior to that, I was active in the tourist industry in Austria, okay, and in Hungary. And part of my work was to take German and American tourists to castles and museums. And having this background and seeing the Southwest Museum, passing by there just about every day or at least every other day, okay, I can't get over the fact of what a beautiful jewel this museum is, okay? It reminds me of a museum, actually a castle turned into a museum on the Danube, okay, a castle called Dürnstein. And the size of this castle is about the same size as the Southwest Museum, okay? And what gets me here is that in this current situation, as I understand it, is that there's an attitude on part of the Autry Museum to dismiss the Southwest Museum as something antiquated, no longer necessary. Well, what is history all about? It's to cherish things of the past. And the Southwest Museum is one building that looks like a genuine treasure from the past. And getting back to the castles in Europe, well, they're not just empty places. They have the appropriate collections and furnishings and artifacts in them. So the issue here is somehow or other, something needs to happen whereby the Autry Museum recognizes the greater value of the Southwest Museum. Thank you.
Nancy Lilly?
Good morning. I tend to notice that something seems to get a bit lost in the shuffle. The Autry is not just a local icon or treasure. It is a national treasure. And I appreciate the efforts that the Autry has put in to help the situation. But the Southwest Museum is a special entity into and of itself, archaeological, historical, sociological, and we have been given the opportunity to perpetuate it for this generation, but for future generations. And I feel that sometimes we get so involved with the local end of it, and we forget that it's an overall very special historical treasure that, again, we have been given the honor of taking care of. So please take into consideration how very special it is. And again, thank goodness that the Autry has helped so much. But for goodness sakes, the Southwest Museum has to continue for our sake, but for the sake of education, for the sake of the rest of the country, for the sake of our history. Thank you.
Thank you. Olga Hall?
I want to bring your attention to the how many kids would benefit by having the Southwest Museum reopen. There was a study done by the Franklin High School students where so many kids could benefit by it. Right now, I don't have the amounts of kids that they would benefit by it. But that was before the goal line was extended. So now it's gonna even impact many more kids, especially when education is being cut. Kids will not have the experience of the facility of going and experience these museums. I myself was one time on the metro, and there was some kids coming from Pasadena, second graders, that went to Olvera Street. They have a field trip. And so I was talking to them, and so then I realized, how many more kids could go in field trips from their schools, from everywhere. I seen kids coming from Santa Barbara for their trips, and they could very easily come to this museum. So you have to have that into consideration. Now, another thing I want to say, talk about it, is the excuse me. One of the things, Gene Autry, his cowboy quote, the cowboy must never shoot first, hit smaller men, or take unfair advantage. Second, he must never go back on his word or a trust confided in him. He must always tell the truth. So I think item 1 and item 2 will bring us back to obeying the law, and that's the merger. This country stands on obeying the law, so please, let's go back to that. Thank you.
Is this Amy Booth Green? Is it Amy? Okay. Oh. You said you didn't want to speak? You changed your mind? Well, okay. We politicians never change our mind.
Just want to thank you all very much, and want to thank the Autry too. And I just want to say I never had the chance to go to the Southwest Museum. So, and when listening to Olga, talk about the children and stuff, I mean, I feel like I missed out a lot. And so I'm really hoping that for future generations, and particularly for the city, because I think it's important for the city to protect what is something of honor. And anyways, I just hope for that. And I just have to say one other thing, and I don't know if this is okay or not, but who I keep thinking about are the Indian nations. And I feel so bad because the Indian nations had their land taken away from them by us, and it kind of feels like, in a way, it's happened again with the Southwest Museum, and also the way Hollywood has depicted the Native American in the past. And it just is kind of sad that the Gene Autry maybe is not upholding the Loomis vision, for. He was the first man to really honor the Native American when nobody was really honoring them. And anyways, I just feel like we owe it to the original Native Americans as well, to for them and for Mr. Loomis and for the city and the future, our children in the future, so that we can come to a greater understanding of our past and our present and our future. So anyways, I just thank you all very much, because I know this is a lot of difficult work on everybody's part. Trying to communicate and get along can be tricky. Okay, bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha Benedict.
I'm Martha Benedict. I represent the Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council. I was here last time, and I want to reiterate that last year we voted as a council to support the first motion, and specifically that we would request that a community member, and specifically a neighborhood council people, be included also as elected officials or as elected volunteers who could represent the interests of the community. I think it's extremely important, as you're hearing this testimony this morning, that the community be heard in this process, and I appreciate that this motion opens up this opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herman.
Did you also want to speak on item 6? You put it- you-
I'll waive it for the moment, but yes,
Okay, we'll hold that one for now. Okay.
thank you. Council members and members of this committee, I'm a former resident of Boyle Heights, as you may only guess, but also a strong believer in what museums can do and benefit not just a community, but benefit the city of Los Angeles. So just hearing these comments brings to mind how important a museum can be in a minority, impoverished community, which I live in and still live in. And I do my best as an advocate to promote education, to promote the learning and the ability to learn, whether you're disabled or not, but to venture out into your community and see the riches, the tourist spots that we all think about and wish we can go. So this is one that I haven't been to. I just came back from the Arm and Hammer Museum yesterday. It's wonderful, and I plan to go back most of this week. So it is important that we hold on to these treasures, because they are treasures, and they contain history, a history that was taken from those of us who actually can say we generated out of this country. And so identifying funds and sources for renovation and operation of Southwest Museum, there has to be a source. There has to be a source. There's ways of finding fundings or allowing the funding to be generated to keep that museum functioning in that area. Mr. Reyes, that's your area, bordering Mr. Weezar's area. And so I strongly wish and hope that your ears are listening and your creative minds are thinking and finding a solution and a remedy to assist us in keeping our museum there and offering it to the generation of children and those in education who wish to pursue a trip there and find out what the museum is all about. Thank you.
Okay, before we move forward with items 1, 2, and 3, I'd like to take up, set that aside for a moment and take up items 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Those are consent matters. We have no cards on those, so
I'll move it.
it's been moved by Mr. Reyes
Second.
and seconded, and that matter is approved on consent. If I could take up item number 6 very quickly, we have one card.
Thank you.
Mr. Herman?
Here we're talking about grants for summer lunch programs. I, of course, support it. Today in this economic downfall, we have many children who come from poverty homes or broken up homes that do not have the resources for a lunch provided at home. So I encourage council and those who are interested in advocating on summer programs for children and improving how grants can effectively and appropriately be spent to create a lunch program. I'm in support of that, and you have a good morning.
Thank you. Okay, that matters.
I'll move that.
Moved by Mr. Reyes, seconded by Mr. Labange, and approved by the committee as a whole. Okay, if we could go to back to items 1, 2, and 3. Who wants to speak for Mr. Reyes?
Well, first, I want to thank the city attorney and the different offices that came together to focus on this. One, I appreciate how we were able to look at the content of the original items, and in light of the legal constraints, jurisdictional constraints that were identified by the city attorney, to come up with language that gets to the intent of items 1 and 2 and 3. Again, I think there is a moment in time in which we need to really just stop and reassess where we're at and figure out what's best for our future generations that we've heard throughout the morning. I really believe there's a goodwill and a good sense of purpose in terms of developing a partnership with the Autry Museum and all the representatives, along with a community who is essentially desperately trying to seek ways to open up those doors and reestablish the museum for what it could be. That, I think, is the goal that everyone has. So I've submitted a suggested action to receive and file motions 1 through 3 and introduce the following. And that would be to, I move that the Chief Legislative Analyst, Chief Administrative Officer, Department of Recreation and Parks and Cultural Affairs Department open discussions with the community and all the stakeholders of the Autry Museum, Southwest Museum Casa Adobe, with the objective of establishing goals for each of the respective museums. These include, but are not limited to, renovation, expansion, exhibitions at the aforementioned museums. So it's applying to both museums. It is trying to establish, again, that rapport. And I'm hoping in concert with my colleagues, we can lift the status of and significance of Charles Loomis, his work as the first librarian, the museum itself, but also provide an environment where the Autry Museum can continue to play a significant role to, how can I put this, uplift this sense of spirit for both Autry and the Southwest Museum stakeholders. And my goal is to respect Gene Autry's name, to make sure that his name is not diminished in any way, that we look at his efforts to uphold society by sustaining these beautiful facilities, but that we treat the Southwest Museum with as much respect and interest in both monetary terms, support in the philanthropic circles, in the private circle, as well as government. So that would be the intent. I'd also want to make sure that I receive and file 2 and 3, amend number 1 with the motion. That'd be the appropriate language.
Although, please suggest, I think you had said establishing goals. Is this on?
Can you put, maybe
Bring it
put that-
closer.
Put it closer to you.
Bring it closer.
There you go.
Thank you. I would just simply, instead of using the word establish, I think we had suggested arriving at agreed upon goals.
Arriving at agreed upon goals, okay, as opposed to establish. Okay. Could I have a second on that?
Yeah, I second it. I just wanted to add a friendly amendment that we include the Los Angeles Historical Society, which is an involved group of the history of Los Angeles, and also the Los Angeles County Natural History Museum, or any county museum, just to see if we could reach out to others in some ways. I think the county has had a difficult time in the past, but they've created partnerships that they're extremely successful, be it the Hollywood Bowl, or be it LACMA, or be it the Natural History Museum. So if that's a friendly amendment, I think that would be
What was
nice
the
out.
amendment again?
That we include the Los Angeles City Historical Society, which is a dedicated people in the eyes of Charles Loomis and others, and that also that the Los Angeles County Natural History Museum be asked to be included. So you don't know what the county has or the city has in many facilities throughout the region, and maybe there's opportunities there.
I have no problem with the friendly amendment, but just one question. Are they aware that we are including them in this?
No, but I just think this is how you bring people together. You
I just want to
certainly
make
do,
sure
yeah.
that I don't assume anything.
No, I would certainly think the Historical Society would be
Okay.
out, but I just think
All right. No,
everybody here lives in the county of Los Angeles, so I don't think
No, there's
there's
no
any
problem with that. I
difference.
just want to make sure, out of formality's sake.
Right. And there's another technical question, Madam City Attorney. When we talk about Recreation and Parks Department or Recreation and Parks Commission, because the commission is superior to the department in its sense of ordinance and law, how does that work out? How does the
For the
that-
creation of this working group, it would be the department, so it would be staff from the department be
right?
trying to work.
But anything Rec and Parks did ultimately would have to be approved by their commission. Thank you.
Well, the commissioners are a part of the department.
But the commission makes the
So-
decision. They're not part of the department.
No,
They
but
run the department.
No, but the word department is inclusive of the commission.
I don't think so.
No, the commission is the head of the department.
Exactly. So how could it not be
Reports to
inclusive?
the board. So staff
Anyway,
of the
that's-
department would be assigned to work
That's
with
here. We got the
committee
gist
on
of
this
it.
issue, and it would report back to the board.
Good, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, on item number 2, for those of you that spoke on the issue of requiring the Autry to seek funding for the Southwest Museum and Casa Adobe related to other future grant applications. I mean, we really can't control that. I mean, I can think of a lot of controversial and probably illegal actions and organizations that we work with, that if we started reviewing every single grant they applied for, we would just get into a mountain of problems. And I don't believe we have the right to do that. So, and the city attorney has opined that. But I think there's a couple of concepts that I really think are important here. And let me give some background. When I was in the state legislature, I co-wrote the endowment for museums in California, which provided hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to museums, including the Autry, which eventually qualified. So I know a little bit about museums, and I also know there are hundreds and hundreds of museums, most of which nobody knows about, and it's unfortunate, but there are some museums that most of us would agree shouldn't be museums, and yet they are on the list. But the point I want to make is this: a couple of things. Number one, a nonprofit corporation serves the community, and many times they enacting as a corporation, which they are, they neglect or fail to recognize the significance of their responsibility to the community. Nonprofit corporations don't exist for the purposes of profit. They don't exist for the purposes of bettering themselves. They exist for the betterment of the community, and that's why they are authorized by the state to operate. That's why they get no taxes on property, and that's a big one. So they need to recognize that their nonprofit status is critical to their thinking. They have to appreciate that they're there for the purpose of benefiting the public. As to their mission statement, there's various mission statements. Every organization has its own mission statement, but that's at the core of what they do and why they were approved as a nonprofit corporation. And I think if I were going to delve into this a lot more, one of the things I would want to look at is the mission statement of the Autry Museum. And then separate and apart from that, these are tough times for nonprofit corporations, charitable organizations in general. I was a controller of a multi-million-dollar countywide effort and came up through nonprofit corporations, and I wrote grants. That was my function. I thought that was going to be my career. So I think there has to be a dose of reality here that it is very difficult to identify your sources, but more importantly, it requires an investment in staffing and having clear targeted objectives in order to be able to, and then of course you need to have talented people that can write the grants that would be received by the potential funders. So I believe that we need to look at the original agreements between the city and the Autry to first recognize whether or not they're adhering to the letter of that agreement. But secondly, regardless of what we find in that document, I think the community is entitled to know how the Autry plans on getting the Southwest Museum on its feet. That is a reasonable request, and but I don't believe that the effort to improve the Southwest Museum is enhanced by ignoring the community. So by suggesting, for example, that the community cannot offer as much as other museums, indeed, museums aren't much without the community supporting them. So if I were in charge of trying to get the Southwest Museum on its feet, I would be out in the community every day trying to hustle up all the support I can get. And the funding agencies aren't going to be any more kind if you don't have the community supporting you. So one of the first things that you need to do in raising money for a community venture is to make sure the community supports that venture. If I'm a grant, if I'm a funder, and I used to be when I worked for Mayor Bradley, I want to know if the community supports it. That's the first thing I'm going to ask. The community doesn't support it, why would I want to fund it if the community doesn't even like it? So I hope we get past this stage, because in my mind, when an organization is sensitive or in the worst case ignores the community's interest or is sensitive when they get involved, then that is an indicator of something that needs to be looked at. Because without the community support, as far as I'm concerned, that it is not operating correctly. So I'm hoping that there's a dose of reality on both sides of this equation. Number one, the community needs to recognize how difficult a task this is. I think you do. I think you recognize how difficult it is, and maybe that's part of your angst because you can't get past getting an organized, consistent, cohesive strategy together that the community feels gives them the confidence that the Southwest is going to be open. The community deserves that. The community deserves the right to know that the Southwest is going to be open on a regular basis. I don't know why we wouldn't want to give them the opportunity to weigh in on that. And there seems to be a lot of anger on both sides. And, anger doesn't accomplish a lot in these cases. I would rather turn the energy of anger into energy of hope and prosperity. And only you can do that. This isn't my community. I would only hope I could have one of these in my district. We're trying to build a children's museum thing, and it looks pretty good, but in that process, I've also learned how difficult it is to raise the funds. So I believe this is an opportunity for us to re-investigate the original understanding of how we're going to move forward on the Southwest Museum. At the same time, explore new possibilities to take advantage of whatever opportunities might be out there, and recommit as one united group, because that's the only way it's going to get done. One united group to do everything possible to make this incredible collection a reality for the people of Los Angeles. Right now, they don't even know about it, and hopefully someday they will. So I have no problem with concurring with Mr. Reyes's amendment to item number 1. I agree that we should receive and file items number 2. And having said that, that would be the order.
That'll be 2 and 3. And Mr. Chairman, if I want to thank you for your observations, your encouragement. Your stewardship in this committee is invaluable, and I thank you for creating this environment as well. I also want to be able to say that as a youngster going there and walking through that tunnel in complete awe as a 6-year-old, that's an impression that will never leave my mind. And when it shut down for many, many years. Then Councilman Hernandez with the block grants, working with the Southwest, we opened up that pathway, we established the elevator, and that which created memories for me became reality for many, many children. And so I look forward to the day we can do that again. But I also want to take a moment to apologize to the folks here for being late. Mr. Alex Baum, who had been working for 40 years in creating the Bicycle Advocates Bicycle Plan, was being honored this morning at this Good Samaritan Hospital with Mr. Andy Lika. And there's a whole group of bicyclists led by Councilman Tom LaBonge, who was a great motivator this morning. And we were able to look at that, but I want to make sure I got here as soon as I could, so my deepest apologies. So with that, thank you again, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilman LaBonge.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something. I want to thank everybody, too. It takes relationships, and you have to look people in the eye and say, okay, how could we work out whatever's the future? It's very difficult in a changing time. Many institutions would have died if it wasn't for collaboration. I do want to thank Richard Alatorre, the councilman, who fought for the goal line, and he fought for the bridges first, long before the rails were laid. Because if the bridges weren't built, they would have gone other places in a highly competitive county. Having that stop there, and as Mr. Reyes spoke of Mike Hernandez and his work, as a child from Ivanhoe Elementary, I went to Southwest Museum 6 years ago after leaving Norris, where my wife was being treated. We had a nice afternoon at the Southwest, so one day it rises again, but it takes a collaboration. I do remember, Mr. Alatorre, I believe the Southwest was under $900,000, of which their endowment was. And I'm talking to you too, Mr. Alatorre. I've been riding I made a mistake. What did I say? What did I say? I know I'm having, what did I say? Tell me what I said, Richard. Alatorre. I was thinking of Richard. Okay. I'm talking too fast because I know you like to run your committees fast. But the kid, Mr. Alarcon, the situation was an opportunity. I'm glad it stayed in Southern California. It could have gone to Oklahoma, could have gone to some other place, and we would not have any opportunity. Now there's an opportunity. That's why I want to broaden and talk to the county, and who knows, at other educational institutions too, because there's opportunities. So it has to work together in some way. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, you got that clear?
Okay, there'll be a receive and file on item 3 and item 2. Item 1, we're amending as per Councilmember Reyes' statement as modified by Councilmember LaBonge, and small addition from the city attorney.
Correct.
I thought it was a small but important contribution.
Thank you, sir.
From the city attorney. Okay, with that matter is approved, and this meeting is.
Just one thing I don't want to. I want to apologize. I did have a senior moment. Okay, I did have a senior moment. I apologize. I called you.
I can relate.
But your first name is Richard. Halfway.
This meeting's adjourned just in time. Thank you.